Hello and welcome to episode 7 of Trident Talk. Today, we're doing an episode of Building Brilliance where I brought on the Birdman, Isaiah, and my younger brother, Kameron. They both work at Audi Dominion as car sales reps, so we're going to talk a little bit about sales, talk a little bit about the car industry. Before we jump into all of that, would you like to introduce yourself, Isaiah?
So name's Isaiah, go by Zaybird, Birdman, that kind of stuff. Known Kameron now for coming up on 2 years, known Kaleb for almost that same amount of time.
Awesome. Well, how long have you been in the car industry?
For a total amount of time, probably 2 years and 2.5 years. We'll go with that. Audi wasn't the first place, but
all right,
longest place.
And Camo?
I am the younger brother of you. Been in the car industry now for about 1.5 years. My first sales job that I've been at longer than a month. So
Yeah, that's nice.
mm-hmm.
So I know this can be a little bit awkward if you've never done a podcast before. The one thing I will say is just have a conversation like we normally do and everything will be okay. But tell me a little bit about your experience in the car business and what made you stay in it for so long. For 2 years, right?
Yeah, we'll say with Audi for 2 years. We'll stick with that one because that's where I've been the longest at. The thing that really made me want to stay, because there's plenty of reasons to want to leave, biggest thing keeping me here is, number one, the relationships that I've built, with my friends and, a ton of my clients at this point. I have the people that I wouldn't even say are my clients or my friends that happen to buy cars from me at this point. And then just the experiences that I get to, go ahead and do. Like no other job that I've ever had has sent me off to Atlanta to, do some, a little bit refined training. But, getting to do things in Atlanta that I didn't have to pay for. It was just cool to have a company or, the ability to go and do those things. But yeah, I would say that was my main reason for wanting to stick around here for so long.
Okay. And you, what's got you into car sales? I know you started your sales career working with me as a roofer, and you came to me and you're like, hey, this roofing thing isn't for me. I think I'm going to do something else, and I completely understand that. My industry is definitely not for everybody, but you've been in cars for the last year or so, and you've really taken to it like a fish in water. So what's made you stick with it? What do you think's contributed to so much success on that side, especially for being so young?
I think a lot of it has to do with my love for people, and then at the time that I got hired, I really enjoyed cars. So I was putting two things that I knew. One I liked a lot, the other one that I was familiar with as far as like cars. I know my products. Not really German engineering. That's not what I jumped into, but I knew a lot of it wanted to be around people, getting to enjoy people's company, kind of understand, where they're at. That's one of my favorite things. I mean, someone walks into my dealership and 5 minutes, I feel like we already have a relationship where they consider me their friend, right? You kind of just get to break down the walls, get to know who they are, and then at the end of the day, they end up spending $70,000 to $110,000 with you. It's kind of crazy.
That is kind of crazy.
They're not even in frame.
Oh, do I have?
Yeah, I think you. Come on, camera woman. I've got some assistance behind the camera today because we've had the camera fall out of focus the last couple of videos. People's face get cut off because I'm not paying attention to that. I can't do everything, right? So thank you, Mia.
No, but I think it all piggybacks off that. The experiences you get to spend with people is really cool. I mean, I love picking people's brain, kind of understanding like what they've been to, what their hobbies are, kind of just, bullshitting with them really at the end of the day. And then for them to trust you enough to spend that much money with you is pretty neat. One thing that I'm starting to get to is the point of reoccurring customers, being there for 1.5 years. The clientele that we do work with is on the upper echelon. So with that being said, they kind of afford to transfer out of these cars, within a year, 1.5 years. And I'm kind of starting to see the customer experience that I give the first time go around. Obviously, it gets you paid then, but, they trust you enough to want to do business with you again and then send families your way, which is what I've been experiencing lately, which is pretty cool. It's like full circle of the industry, which is pretty neat.
It's a pretty cool thing. One of the, sorry to jump in here.
No, go ahead.
But one of those things that Jazz, he was both of our team leads at one point, really taught us a lot about the car industry. Whenever you're in like a shrewd negotiation with somebody, they think that you're trying to make all the money on them. One of the best lines he ever told me was, it's not about the first car, it's the next car. And that is basically where we're at right now. So we're on that second, third, fourth car in some instances with some of these clients, because we've been able to build such a good relationship with most of these clients. Every now and again, you have those ones there. You give them everything, and that's still not enough.
You're still the devil. Yeah.
You're just the worst person in the world.
Makes a ton of sense. So what did you do before you got into cars?
So before car sales, I was actually in the refinery. So that's a totally different industry. And one of the reasons why I switched out of that was one of my good buddies, Kukul there. He was like, hey, Isaiah, you know, you don't ever shut the hell up. Why don't you ever try to sell cars? You know, people like you. Why don't you try to go that route? And I was like, well, you know, you're not wrong. I'm not nearly as, you know, outspoken as Kameron.
Social butterfly.
Yeah, I'm not the biggest social butterfly as Kameron here. But once I get comfortable with people, you know, start opening up a little bit more. I was like, oh, yeah, let me go ahead and try that. And it's worked out ever since. So it was a good, good switch.
So you were told to go into sales because you just don't know how to be quiet?
Kind of, yeah. That, and then, you know, I tend to talk about things as if I know what I'm doing.
Oh, okay.
And that works well. Kameron and Armin can both attest to that. I just start talking about the most random of things and just keep it going.
I definitely understand that. There's you just ask a lot of questions and sound very confident in the few things that you do know, and typically a conversation will keep going. And, you know, you did roofing sales. Before that, you were involved in what?
I used to work at Cactus Ropes. It's the second largest rope manufacturing company as far as roping goes. For team roping, calf roping, we were in charge of the whole rope making process from scratch. So right out of high school, I was going to college working there, and that's kind of where I found the value in $1 over an education, because it's not that I was making crazy money, but when you make that amount of money and you have no bills and you're 18 years old, you're basically rich. So it was like a self-conflicting like battle with myself, whether I keep going to school or I save my money, invest it somewhere, branch out and do my own thing. At the same time that all that was happening, I ended up moving positions from what was a rope stretcher, where I was responsible for tying the eyes and stretching the ropes to make sure that they were able to be swung, basically kind of like a break-in process in the rope making process. I got moved to a rope manufacturer. So I basically made ropes from scratch, 16 strands, about as thin as tooth floss, go through a machine. Anyways, I ended up cutting up my fingers. I cut off my fingertips, and after that, you know, I got a settlement 3 months straight. I didn't have to work, and I was getting paid full workers' comp, and that was kind of like a self-reflection moment of just wanting to branch out of the small town that you come from. I mean, you can only grow so much whenever you live in a small town like that, and then that's whenever I took the jump to Austin and move with you, just to, you know, spread my wings and kind of experience other things in life. And then whenever that didn't work out, you so happened to have the apartment in San Antonio, which was right down the road from the other opportunity that I was presented at Audi. So just the stars kind of aligned after, you know, life's path.
So you guys are both in car sales, so you probably both follow a very similar sales process, seeing how you both work at the same place.
Yeah.
Would you say there's any differences between the way that you go about showing a car or your customer experience from one another?
Oh, yeah, I would say 100%. Like, Kameron is the most personable person I know. I, on the other hand, I have to build up a ton of rapport initially during that like needs analysis, figuring out like what this person is interested in. So that's where I do most of my heavy lifting right then and there.
Mm-hmm.
And then whenever I get to the right car, the one they're looking for, I pride myself on knowing a lot about these cars. So they typically don't have any questions whenever we're done just going over the car. Kameron, on the other hand, from what I've seen, obviously he has his own thing. People just love him from the jump. As soon as they meet him, his energy is very much so like,
yeah, I can
he's a
attest
happy
to that.
person. People just start talking to him. They love him. So I would say mine is a little bit different, where I have to put a little bit more effort to get them to open up a little bit more, and then they get to trusting me because I know what I'm talking about.
That's hilarious, because I would say I'm probably more like you on the sales things. My brother's always been a social butterfly. It's one of his like many inherent skills he was born with, but I am not. One of the things that I'm really good at is asking a lot of questions to build rapport. I know the world about every prospect I talk to, because I think they're the most important part of this whole process. You don't really got to know a whole lot about me other than I'm really good at putting on roofs and I'm going to solve this problem for you. So I have to lean on my technical knowledge. Also, because I started selling when I was 20 years old, there's not a lot of rapport to build with most people at that point. There's not a lot of things we're doing on a daily basis that are the same. So when I was learning how to sell, since I couldn't lean on like what I was doing at home to relate to people with families and kids and wives and things like that, I had to get really good at asking questions. And so can you tell us a little bit about how you go about building that relationship with people? I mean, that does seem to be your strength.
Just right off the jump, I mean, everyone always has a stereotype, right? When you go into a car dealership, like from the old days, you think they're out to get you. And then you meet someone like me, and like first thing I say is, crack a joke, get them a water. Kind of like one of our house rules. I mean, whenever they come in, it's basically like your house. So, I mean, offer them a water. If they say no, bring them one anyways. Mm-hmm. They're going to drink it. So it's just like those things to just build trust. I've found when I first started, my sales process was really just bubbly, make them laugh. At the end of the day, we're selling Audis. They sell themselves 100%. It's a luxury car. It's a want. It's not a need. So, I mean, as far as the car, the engineering, the drive, the comfort, everything, it sells itself. But then you kind of have to grow as far as your career. And then I started to learn so much about these cars that I started to turn into a robot. And then you could see not necessarily that my numbers were going down, but the experiences, you can read a vibe, you can read the room. They started to go down because it was like they were more so dealing with a robot, not necessarily me. So finding the hardest balance of my sales strategy is being bubbly enough where they're having a good time and they want to drive the car, they want the car, but also being informative enough that they understand everything they're getting, everything that they're not getting, and then at the same time making them love me to a point that they still respect me. And so whenever we're moving along through the process, you kind of not necessarily have control, but you're guiding them in the right way to save their time, save their money, whatever it may be. So finding that happy balance is definitely something I've struggled with, but kind of fine-tuning it, again, being there for a year and a half. But I would definitely say just at the end of the day, cars sell themselves. As long as they're having fun, I mean, that's the best thing you can do.
So I have a question for you to follow up on that. He noticed that being a robot and going too much on product information would cause him to lose sales. How do you keep that balance? Because I know that's a struggle that I've had in the past in my career. So how do you know when to check yourself? When do you realize those things might be happening to you?
So that was something I was going to build off of that. So great that you asked the question. So that was something I had struggled with too, was being too robotic. I was too technical about all the cars, didn't have enough of the personal touch. Well, I talked to Jazz again. I was like, hey, I feel like I'm losing out on some of these sales here because I'm not building enough like personal relationship with this person. I know a ton about the cars. They always attest to that, but I'm not connecting with them enough. He's like, well, at what part are you cracking a joke? Are you pulling away from the car itself where you're starting to talk to the person? And I was like, well, I'm really not. I'm just going through intermittently. I'll ask, do you have any questions? You need me to go over this again? He's like, well, most people are not going to want to seem dumb in front of you as if they didn't receive all that information the first time. It's like, so slow it down. I see you on your walk around, you're doing your whole thing, you're great, but make it a little bit more personable. Yeah. So what I have started to do and what I've seen pick my numbers back up, because I struggled with that as well, was just cracking jokes intermittently. So with our taillights do this special thing where it'll switch from your top taillights to your bottom one if you open the thing. And that's an easy part to make a joke about. Oh, look at all the trunk space. You can throw some bodies in there, or whatever happens. It's really right there is whenever you pull away from I'm the expert on this car to I'm back to just a person, and that's where I've seen the relationship kind of come back together. So just checking yourself intermittently with a joke is my best way to go about it.
Yeah, tying stories into the sales process definitely helps, because whenever you bring up ultrasonic radars and front top cameras, they're like, yeah. But you throw it in like. Everyone in San Antonio is familiar with traffic on 1604. You tell them that an ultrasonic radar and a front camera are responsible for your traffic jam assist. I'm like, what is that? And then you just like break it down. Like back in the day, you couldn't set your cruise control unless you're over 30 miles an hour. Now you can set it at 15 and it'll stop and go for you in traffic. Like making them understand in a real like world situation how it works. So it's technology and then, effect, I guess, would be the word, so that way they can see exactly what the big word means, that if you're running through saying like, oh yeah, ultrasonic radar here and you have camera over here with the traffic jam assist, and it's just like no one knows what that is. There's no function to whatever you just said. So like throwing stories in there, and then of course again me being a smart butt, just throwing a joke every now and then and kind of tie everything together so they're learning at the same time that they're understanding the in-depth technology that's in these cars has definitely helped.
Yeah, I mean, selling a luxury brand, there must be plenty of technology that can be kind of boring to go through, but it's also important for them to know.
Big words for no reason, yeah.
Awesome. So I have two different things I want to talk to you guys a little bit more about, and I'll let you pick which one we go through first. So do you guys want to talk to me about what a consumer should look out for when they go buy a car, or how they should maybe judge their sales rep to make sure that they're getting transparency and somebody that's honest like you guys? Or we can talk about the sales side of it first. So you guys tell me which side do you want to talk about first.
Which one's a little bit more exciting? The first one seems a little bit more exciting because we get to get some, insider details. So maybe we should start with the other one first, and then end it off with the other one.
Okay, so we'll start with some of the sales stuff. So what are some of the common objections you guys are running into, and how do you help prospective car buyers overcome those and make the right decision to move forward with you guys?
So being in a luxury dealership, working at an Audi store, we know that our customers are not only in the market for an Audi. They're going to be looking at BMW. They're going to be looking at Mercedes. They're going to be looking at Lexus and Genesis and all these other great brands that have great vehicles. That is probably the number one thing that I run into, just because that's the nature of our buyers. Now, most of them. Some people are Audi to the T.
Live hard, die hard,
That's
yeah.
all they drive. That's one of the main things. And our store is set up or set us up great to kind of combat that good stuff. We have pretty much every model and all that kind of going on. That way we can kind of make it a one-stop shop. But that's the most common one that I see. Kameron, I'm sure you have other ones.
Yeah, we're going to piggyback off his thing is we are blessed to have the opportunity we have having the Mercedes, BMWs. So whenever they are comparing it, this is just as far as even a consumer aspect. If you can take the time out, say they're looking at like a Q5 compared to a BMW X3, similars in sizes, if taking the time out to show them, X, Y, Z, because there are benefits here and there's benefits here to each manufacturer, but you kind of just show them, and you never want to dog on a brand. That's one thing as far as selling these cars. If they're like, oh, I'm comparing it to a BMW, you don't want to be out the gate like, gross. Don't do that. They're cheaply made. Don't do, that, because
I think that's a great statement for anybody. I mean, if you're in sales, you should never dog your competition because it just makes you look worse.
100%. Because at the end of the day, just like anyone else in the world, you can have your bad story about this or that, but who's to say, back at you? You know what I mean? Like there's somewhere in time that could be totally reversed. So definitely, and then this goes back for a consumer, aspect. Like I'm willing to take my time of day to show you like, okay, comparing it to an X3, the body styles haven't changed since 2021. So even if they want to look at a new one, it's going to drive the same as a 2022. So just showing them that saves them a stop from going over there, dealing with another salesperson that they may or may not like, but they can kind of, boom, cross both off right there. It's either, yeah, I like the Q5 or yeah, I like the X3. Okay, Q5, bam, we have, 50. If it's, oh, I like the X3. Okay, well, go into that X3. Now we can certify our vehicles, all that good stuff, and then, from there it'd be a whole different process. But if you shoot yourself in the foot at the beginning, it's going to be hard to backtrack later on in the process. That's definitely one thing that if you can take your time and be patient with your customer, you could probably still earn their business, even though they're comparing to that, if you just take the time. Because if they go down the road and then they get a salesperson that just push, they could leave in a car that they don't like. It happens all the time. So
that makes sense. Man, Isaiah, could you tell me a little bit about maybe like one of the hurdles you had to overcome in your sales career and what you did to learn to get better, I guess would be a good way to put it.
Well, a hurdle that I had to really combat was I'm just like we had started off with, I'm not naturally the most extroverted person in the world, but I understand that this is my job, and my job is to get people to like me, to get, figure out what they're looking for in a vehicle and all of that. So that was more of like a personal hurdle that I had to get over. And it took some time. I still deal with it today because, my personality isn't going to change like that just because it's my job. That was a very, very big one that I had to overcome. Now, there are some tools that I've learned, to help me throughout that kind of stuff. Like,
what are some of them? I put you on the spot.
Okay, so the main one that I go to is just thinking of what would this person do. One that I lean on a lot is Jazz or Kameron. I'm not just saying that because he's here. Just based off of this customer, what would Kameron do in this situation? Because he's great at, some aspects of the job. He's the best at it. Like, okay, how would Kameron handle this objection? How would he handle this customer? So thinking about how this successful person handles things is how I implement it into mine. Kind of put my own spin on it, of course, because I'm not going to just copy and paste exactly what Kameron does or Jazz or anybody else that is good with this type of client. That is probably the main one. Obviously, there's other ones, but...
What do you think a hurdle you had to overcome in your sales career? It's a tough question, right?
I would say there's a fine line between asking for business and being pushy. That is definitely one still that I struggle with for sure. Because at the end of the day, you build up this relationship and rapport with them that no one wants to be the bad guy and be like, oh, he pushed me here. But at the end of the day, I lean on you heavy for it is you will never know if you don't ask. If you don't ask, you can't even get it because the first step of getting business is asking for the business. So that's definitely a fine line that I struggle with. There's sometimes different days, obviously, different confidence levels, but sometimes it's crazy how it works too. The way, if you just say it and you're confident in it, it's almost like it works every time. But then like if you have like a little bit of doubt, if you say whenever you're asking to earn someone's business, that's definitely like a fine line that I understand what to do, but I struggle with still doing it, like just asking for the business. That's one of the hurdles that I have, and it sucks that I know what to do to get past it, but it's just like that confidence just to like say it.
It's
correctly.
always that minor fear of I would have to agree with you, actually. That was probably my biggest struggle going into sales was knowing when to segue into asking for your sale. Because the truth is 80% of people don't make it in the sales industry as a whole because they don't know how to ask for business. And I can tell you, and it still probably happens today, I make a point to always ask at least once for the business, even if it comes out gross. And what I mean is, like, I might not have a good segue to be like, okay, and if I can get your approval there, we might just be in a dead spot in a conversation. I'll be like, oh, I haven't asked yet. Hey, can I get you a sign right there? Like, so we can start the conversation of figuring out what the true objections are, or what your concerns are, because it doesn't matter how good of a walkthrough in your guys' case for a car, or how good of a presentation, in my case, sitting in the home going through everything for the roofing side. There's so much information coming at you in such a short amount of time that you maybe picked up 2 or 3 of the things you were looking for, and you might still have 3 questions unanswered, even if we answered it in our presentation, because there was so much going on at that one point in moment. And I always look at the first ask as really just testing the waters to see where we're at. Because I always assume that from the first time I ask to the 5th time that I ask, there's going to be a bunch of questions in between that I have to answer so that you feel confident in the product that you're getting. I mean, by no means are we trying to shortcut making you feel pressured to go with something. We ask for the sale because it's going to bring the true objection out so that we can help solve that problem, right? And I have to agree, that was probably one of the hardest things for me to learn going into this. But when you see a prospect walk in, do you guys, have a way that you tailor the approach to how you want to talk to them, or how you're going to show them cars, or is that all found in your needs analysis?
Well, I guess it just depends on where you meet them. But like most of the time, if we're outside and we greet someone when they get out of their car, kind of just, walk out to them, say what's up, but in a more professional way, ask what their names are, and go for a handshake. From there, you can kind of judge everything else. You can really tell when a customer has a shield up and when they don't. Whenever you walk up to them, bright-eyed, bushy-tailed, and you're just like, hey, guys, how's it going? And then they put their head down and want to walk by you. Or if they greet you almost with the same exact energy you gave them, because that's just people nature, right? The way that you greet them, and it's kind of hard not to reflect that energy and that excitement. So that's kind of how you can tell how to tailor a customer. But for the most part, you want to greet them, get them in, and then it just guide them through the process. The needs analysis really does help us a lot, especially for people. It's designed to save the customer time. A lot of people think we're doing it for our benefit. It really is to save the customer time. Like, there's been so many times where, like, yeah, we want to look at a Q7 and a Q8, which are both our bigger SUVs. It's the same technology that goes into both of them. But when you sit down, you're like, okay, Q7 and Q8, correct? And they're like, yeah. And then you just find out, do you need a third row? No, we don't need a third row. Okay, well, Q7 has a third row. They're like, oh, no, we don't need that. Bam. That alone saved us at least 45 minutes from trying to find a color combination there, that. And then from there, just, they're called hot buttons, but the questions we have on there, they're very simple, basic, like, important. What do you not like about your car? What do you like about your car? And then from there, you kind of just tailor the experience and then let your personality take over through there. But those are quote unquote hot buttons of,
I know you guys have to get it bad.
Experiences.
Being in the car industry, there's this preconceived notion that a sales guy is always there to take advantage of you. So when we start asking questions, people start to put their guard up in some aspect. But what you're talking about with the need analysis, I do a form of that by going in and, asking questions like, what'd you call me out here for today? What is your goal of my visit today? Because my goal is to get as much information as possible so that I'm there for the shortest amount of time and we solve your problem as fast as possible. Because, I've got a day just like you've got a day. We've got the same amount of hours. I've also got other things I'd like to do, and I want to help solve problems as fast as possible. And you guys have hundreds of cars that you could review and sit down and go through. And
so that's actually a part of our pitch line when we go out to them. We greet them, hey, welcome to Audi Dominion. My name's Kameron. What was your name? Repeat their name back to them, understand you're listening. And it's just, hey, what brings you out today? What can I show you? And then they'll tell us this, and that. It's like, okay, perfect. Well, I have over 400 vehicles here on the lot. 300 pre-owned. I have some on my showroom floor, but I also have a garage full of new vehicles as well. Why don't you follow me inside, get a couple minutes of your time, figure out what features matter most to you, save us hours of time of walking the lot. And that's, it's 108 degrees in San Antonio, Texas. Who's not going to want to save hours of time being in the AC as far as just walking around our lot? And then another thing is, if it's hard to walk our lot because we keep all of our vehicles locked. You have to. These are very expensive vehicles.
You guys also have a nice lot. It's like a parking garage.
Yeah, right. Yeah. So once you just tell them, save you hours of time walking the lot, get some fresh AC. How does that sound? Usually they'll just follow right after you. And then that's kind of how they're like emotional deposits. Everything we're asking is to benefit them, to save them time. The only time that we ask for any information in return is at the very bottom. I try to piggyback into my test drive. It's just like, hey, how do I spell your last name? A good phone number for you, God forbid anything happen. And I think it's all like collected into like the test drive at that point. They'll slide the license over. So it's kind of everything works at one time. So get their license, grab some keys, scan it in, knock 2 birds out with 1 stone, and kind of do like a little lap just like that. And then we start the journey. So definitely wordplay helps a lot as far as getting them to come in and sit down. They don't just like follow you to sit down
Of course
without.
not. I mean, we're all trained not to trust the sales guy.
Yeah,
once we're
exactly.
inside,
Who
you know?
would?
Before we jump into all the homeowner stuff, for anybody who's considering going into, say, the car industry, what piece of advice would you give them?
Understand what you're getting into. A lot of people have this idea where you can make all the money in the world and it's going to be great. It can be that. It can definitely be one of those things, but you really have to understand that you are giving up a lot of your time. So if you have family, if you have things that require a lot of, your time to be there for, you have to be willing to make that sacrifice, or just understand like, hey, this just isn't for me. Because it is a grind and that can be very rewarding, but you do have to sacrifice a lot. Like friends, family members, they have to understand that you have to be willing to give that up.
Yeah, car hours are wild. What about you?
Crazy. Definitely be able to handle your emotions, because you got to remember everyone that you're in front of. That's a fresh experience. They don't know you. You don't know them. You have to be able to keep your emotions in check, whether it's from outside of work or even working, like not showing frustration or getting annoyed. That is one thing that will go a long way. And then just to piggyback off that, the schedule's not easy, not at all. So it's one of those instances, like you go to work, just go to work. Usually you'll be successful and then kind of get out. A lot of it has to do with mindset for sure.
I'm going to piggyback on both of what she said, and I'm just going to make it more general for sales and like just as a whole. If you're going into the sales industry, you have the opportunity to make over 6 figures. I won't use the word easily, but you have it. I wouldn't say it's not obtainable for anybody if you put in the work as far as the sweat equity of prospecting and sharpening your skills by maybe reading if you're not good at closing, like learning how to do it. But think of any job in the world, oil field, construction, operators, any job that makes over 6 figures. How many of them work 40 hours a week?
None of them.
And sales will be no different. And I think that is something that just so many people do not realize. Like, yes, can you make 6 figures? Can you make maybe $250,000 depending on what you're selling and where you're selling it? 100%. Will you work 40 hours a week? Not a chance. Not a single chance. Now let's hop into the fun stuff. You guys said you had some interesting stories on like what prospective car buyers should be worried about when they meet certain salespeople. Maybe start with just a couple of red flags that we could look out for.
So just to call back to what we were talking about earlier, if somebody immediately, when you greet somebody like, okay, what are you looking at? Okay, I'm here looking at a BMW. Like, okay, great. And then you start immediately trashing the BMW. That's a huge red flag. Like, why would you want to work with this guy? He immediately starts trashing the competition. We already talked about this. That is a huge red flag. That if you're a prospective buyer, wouldn't really trust that salesperson.
Mm-hmm. Any red flags come to mind for you? He's loading.
I mean, it's a hard one to talk about, right? Because it's us.
Yeah, it's tough because it's your own industry. I mean, like, red flags for me are simple things like anybody who tells you can get a roof done for free, that's a red flag. Anybody who tells you they can discount thousands of dollars on your roof, that's a red flag, because the money does not come out of their pocket. It's coming out of the labor and material somewhere. So those are kind of red flags that we look for. But, if I'm going to buy a car, what should I go to the dealership knowing so that I maybe don't get taken advantage of?
I would say taking trades over the phone. That's one of the biggest flags that go, around the industry is false promises. A lot of dealerships, they'll like to customers, they don't want to go in anywhere unless they know what their car is worth. Mm-hmm. How is anyone supposed to know what your car is worth if they don't put their hands on it? Mm-hmm. Just like you don't know the value of our car unless you put your hands on it. You can hide, scratch, dings, yada, yada, yada. Maintenance, tires. You can't tell if an engine's leaking by a picture. You know what I mean? Not a lot. Some dealers, they will put a number on a trade and then forget to put in there somewhere, like whether they're texting or on the phone, or say it quick or say it and then like bounce around. But of course, upon professional appraisal, right? So that way their guys can look at it. So, you go into a dealership thinking you're going to get $32,000 for your trade. You like the car that you test drove. Your hopes are all high. You're ready to work numbers. They get all the information from you they need to make a deal happen. And then they hit you, $6,000 less than what they said over the phone. And whenever you're like, why? They're like, well, needs tires, cracked windshield, little belts popping off the loop, whatever it might be. But then they hit you with all these little things that do devalue the car, but your emotion, like your emotional roller coaster, just goes because you thought you were promised 32, which is how they let it to be. At this point, they've already pulled your credit. Numbers are already almost, ideally working on it, but now you have to go. If you don't want to do business here, this is where they have you, then you got to go find another car. Probably you want to stay in that same price point. The condition, everything must have been perfect. That's why you're at this one. You got to start your research over again. And then whenever you find another one, hope that doesn't happen again. And then you have to take another, credit pools, stuff like that. Just more inquiries that just make, so you're almost like stuck.
So as a general rule of thum, don't take the number over the phone.
I wouldn't take the number over the phone. I would professional appraisal from, shoot, if you want all the money, go to Carfax or CarMax.
CarMax,
yeah, CarMax does give fair very
but go
forgiving
get it
physically appraised.
Professionally
get somebody
appraised.
to put their hands on
Not typing in like, it's about to run till the wheels fall off and you put condition excellent.
Yeah,
no, that's not how it works.
Showed ready.
Yeah.
I wanted to go back to what you had asked. What should somebody have if they're in the market for a car? Definitely do your research. We have all the information at our fingertips. Everybody's got a phone on them. Figure out what the car that you're interested in is going for. Look around at other dealerships, see what they're going for. Obviously make sure that you have the same trim levels and similar miles, that kind of stuff. Make sure the Carfax. A lot of people don't look at that. They're like, why is this one $6,000 cheaper than yours? It's the same car, same trim, same miles. They're like, okay, well that one has flood damage. So
yeah,
there's a
that's
huge,
why, buddy.
There's a big difference. So have a good bit of information before going in there. Number one, you're going to save yourself time, and then nobody likes the car buying process. Anything to cut down that time, it's going to help everybody.
So like when you say cut down that time, so you mean from like a whole day to like three quarters of a day? I've never bought a car and not been there all day.
See, you should have asked these questions before. You definitely have those deals that take from 8 a.m. till 10 p.m.
That's because people come in and don't do their research.
Don't do the research.
Like, imagine you go into a place. You're like, okay, I want this one or this one. You drive this one and that one. Okay, the hardest part is finding a car you like. At the end of the day, the paperwork process, it can only be so fast. Like, that stuff does take time. But in the same sense, if you're bouncing around from 6 cars and you're complaining why you've been there for 7 hours, it's like, well, you didn't know what you wanted, dude. You know what I mean? So that definitely, that goes to the consumer, also to salesperson, because sometimes you could be dealing with someone who doesn't know where stuff's at. All that good stuff. But definitely research before you go into buying a car, right? Like, the way I see it, every time I bought a vehicle, I go there, I know what I want, I've left with it every single time, because it's like, I want this one. If it drives good, if the price makes sense, I want it. Some people just come in, they just like. So a lot of the time, my part is like narrowing down what they like. The only reason why they've been there for so long is because
they don't know.
Yeah, I feel like that's the hardest part of selling a car, or that's the most time-consuming part is the customer landing themselves on the car that they want.
Yeah,
like making sure the colors make sense, make sure it drives, the wheels they like, everything else. They think negotiating takes forever. I honestly, even deals that like are going back and forth, I don't think take more than 45 minutes.
Yeah, it's really not. That's the shortest amount of time.
Yeah.
Whenever we get down to that, they're like, oh, how much longer now? It's like, okay, this is the easy part. The numbers, we can get that knocked out pretty quickly. It's the whole finding the car, making sure everything is great. That was the hardest part. Took the most amount of time. Numbers are numbers. That's not very difficult to get done quickly.
That would be my advice to a consumer that is in the market for a vehicle, is to narrow down your search. Like, if you're looking at 8 different cars, figure out what's different between these and then narrow it down to like 3.
Yeah.
And then go see those 3. And if those don't work, then you have the 5 over here. And go look at them. Yeah. But definitely narrowing down your search will save everybody time. Everybody.
Right. Yeah. All right. And with everybody in the car sales industry, unfortunately, having such a negative name on the sales process, how do you guys make sure that you're transparent and keep people comfortable on that?
This is actually a blessing. Again, it all in life, you like to know that you're working for a good company, like making sure the person leading the ship has a good soul, basically. Our dealership, you can go on our website, every single car, whether you're looking at a $180,000 Porsche 911 or a $15,000 like Hyundai Kona or whatever those things are, you can pull the Carfax on that one and you can Carfax on the Porsche. Everything is going to be fully. Now we have what's called an iPacket. You can see service bills, everything that we did to run it through the shop to make sure it is ready to buy. The Carfax report, where it's been serviced, the entirety of its lives, how many owners, whether it's been in a wreck or not. Like, we are fully transparent with every single vehicle on our lot. So it doesn't matter what you're looking at. You can pull it. You can even pull the window stickers, which is actually crazy. So like, you would be knowing if we're trying to hike up a car. Like, you're like, well, that's more than MSRP. Why would I do that? No. And sometimes the shoe fits. If it's a car, you can't get nowhere. It's just the market. But aside from that, fully transparent, which is kind of a blessing to be able to say that, you know, we kind of don't have to worry about that as much as long as you inform the customers that it's there. Like, some people are like, where's the Carfax? I'm like, you saw this car online, right? Like, yeah. Like, we pay for you to have access to it. So that's kind of, I rely on that the whole time, is transparency. Because I'll show them, turn my iPad around, show them that. You can show them the service history. And then even going to that, whenever we present numbers, we show them a JD Power breakdown, which is where the banks value cars, whether it's trade-in and then retail. And then just to earn ourselves more rep, we'll circle it and then go down. Like, our car is already $3,000 below the market value. And then that's it. Not that it's an easy sale, because everyone still wants a deal. But it's easy to stick people that come like from Laredo, or they drive from Austin and they still want like $2,000 off. Well, it's like, sir, you didn't drive 2 hours today for a car that wasn't already the cheapest in the market.
That's fair.
Yeah.
The transparency of our dealership definitely helps our sales process for sure.
Yeah, it's really nice that they have these tools for us to use, which is great. But what's it called? Just attacking that head on, like initially letting them know.
Put this in front of your face a little bit.
Dude, you could have said that a long time ago. Why didn't you say something?
It was fine until just now.
We had this whole time. Just attacking that head on, that's a pretty easy way just to acknowledge that, hey, I know that salespeople don't have the best reputation. And then you pull out the tools, like, this is how we're going to show you that we are being very transparent about everything here. It makes it a lot easier to just acknowledge it. Don't try to hide the fact that we have a bad name. And that helps, build some more rapport, and then obviously some trust.
Oh, yeah. That makes a ton of sense. And then when it comes through, sorry, totally lost my train of thought for a second there.
Happens, man.
Happens to me quite frequently. But can you guys tell me about a personal story that was maybe wild when you guys were at work?
Oh, God.
Ooh, the first time I sold a car.
Okay.
All right. I worked there for like a week. I don't even know how to start these cars or put them in gear. I swear to God. And so I'm just walking down. I've been doing my training all day upstairs. Like, I'm freezing in the BDC, like absolutely freezing. I just wanted to get on my feet, and I'm walking down to the tower. And then I was a little cocky, like, put me in front of someone. Like, I'm ready to, like, And so I'll just, I saw someone walking on the showroom floor, and I just walked up to him. I was like, hey, man, how's it going? You been helped yet? He's like, no. I was like, okay, how can I help you today? And he was pointed at an A7, which is in 2022, you couldn't get them, mind you, as loaded as this one, fully loaded, every option you could think of. And he just points at it, and he's like, how much is that? And I'm just as clueless as he is. So I look in the Monroney, I'm like, $97,000, sir. He's like, how long will it take me to buy it? And I was like, well, you don't want to drive it? He's like, no, it's the one I want. And I was like, okay. Sit down with me. Let me get the paperwork going. We'll should be in and out in 45 minutes. Anyways, I sit him down. My face is just already peachy. I'm like, holy moly, like, this is it. Yeah. All right, cool. So I run in there. I'm like, I got a customer. He doesn't want to drive the car. He just wants to buy it. He already knows this and that. And they're like, okay, well, get a credit app. All right, cool. And so get down there, just going through the credit app, boom, 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 boom. And then come to find out, of course, me being me, asking questions, find out he's a financial advisor, which is what I was going to college for. That's what I wanted to do. So he's kind of I'm picking his brain, kind of like understanding everything else. And then he's like trying to pick mine, but I'm as green as can be. I'm like, I don't know. Like, I don't know anything you're asking. I don't even know what I'm supposed to, I don't know what I'm supposed to fill on the credit app. Like, I went back twice. I was like, is this good? And they're like, no, we need this. How long he's been at his job, this, whatever. Go back, boom, 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 boom. Get the numbers, and then at this time, again, with the market, we had our accessories on there. Mind you, again, this car's MSRP is $97,000. When I saw, like, after tax, title, and license, it's like $109,000. I was like, this guy don't even want to drive it. What's going on? And so Jazz goes out there, who was my manager. He goes out there, tells him numbers. He's like, yeah, just extend the term, but I'm going to put, like, hold on. Looks at his phone, pulls his account. He's like, I'm going to put $65,000 down. I was like, okay. So circles it, yada, 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 while the paperwork's going through it. He's like, yeah, man, like, I made $65,000 last week. I was like, what? What? So he's like, look, and he shows me his check stubs, or like his bank statement for 6-digit like plays. I'm like, wow, okay, cool. So while I'm waiting on finance, I'm like, man, there's no way you're about to spend this much money and not drive the car. Can we please drive the car? Like, I've never even been in one. And he's like, yeah, I guess. So we pulled off the showroom floor. I go to take him down the test drive route, and he's like, nah, man, like this is smooth, but I got dinner plans in an hour, so we just do the turnaround, come back up. He test drove a $97,000 car for like a quarter mile and ended up buying it. I was like, okay, that is absolutely crazy. So my first deal, probably one of the most money that I ever made on a car deal, was my first one. And then that guy, customer experience, knew the owner, already got a head nod. I was like, oh, cool. And then he ended up coming back like 6 months later and trading in another car and buying it for his assistants. I was like, yes.
Nice.
That was like green pea, the coolest. Like,
Welcome to the car business.
yeah, I was like, oh, this is it.
That's going to be a tough one to follow, Isaiah.
Oh man, I don't think I have a good one like that. I have some horror stories and things.
Let's hear a horror story.
Oh, my R8 customer.
That was a great.
That
That's
was
the one I
awesome.
thought you were gonna lead with.
I should have done that one.
Oh, man, I should have.
Sorry,
Honestly,
we
I
got
can't
time.
even think of anything at this point.
Well, I know you had a magazine article or something wrote about you and Audi. Like,
Yeah,
what was that all
'cause
about?
I sold the first two 2023 R8s to be in North America. I had this guy, he had 2 orders for an RS7 and RSQ8. So we already have $20,000 of his money in-house. His dad already bought a car for me. His aunt bought a car for me. And his best friend bought a car for me.
Ooh.
And so I called him. I was like, hey, man, do you want to pull your deposit on one of these cars? We have 2 R8s coming in. We're selling them at MSRP just plus our accessories. He's like, nah. He's like, if I can't have both, I don't want one. What do I got to do to have both? And it's Saturday, like 8:15. Or at night. We already closed. So I have good rapport with this guy. I just called him when I got the news. And he's like, what do I got to do to have both? And I was like, well, sir, we're already getting internet leads from, all across the country. Like, these are the first ones to come in the States. It's like, so you'd have to be here before we open. Like, on Monday, I'll get here at 7:45. Be here before 8:30 so we can get you, money, put it on paper, get you contracted so no one else can touch these cars. I couldn't sleep that night. I could not sleep that night. I was so excited. I was like, this is crazy. He texted me like at 6:15. It was Sunday, so I'm pretty sure he was out, like, it was around this time, so football and everything. He was, drunk. He's like, hey, Cam, can I come in at 9? I texted him back. I said, no. You got to be here before the store opens. So he's like, all right, like, let me shower, this and that. So I get up, like, 6:30. I'm freaking out. I do my shower. I'm about to, like, throw up. I get there. I'm just, like, waiting on him. Well, he walks in. I was like, all right, what do I got to do? And then he tells me he wants to put $30,000 down for both of these cars. So, like, the total is, like, $500,000 worth of cars. And they're like, that may be one. So one of the managers goes down and like, sir, we need $90,000 down just on one. He's like, all right, let me make a call. Comes back. He's like, I'll just run it for $200,000 so we can get both. I was like, okay.
Okay. So, if you say so.
The cars ain't even here. So we basically sold them these 2 pieces of paper. 3 weeks later, because they were like on the way. So 3 weeks later, they came. This guy, he owned hotel companies, construction company. He has his own money. So he brought a whole camera crew at the same time that his aunt was taking delivery of her e-tron S. His best friend took delivery of a limited edition RS5. It was like I was in charge of like $800,000 worth of cars leaving in one day. It was like just hurting them, the cameramen, and they kept going outside and smoking, come back inside. I was like, what is going on? They ordered Chick-fil-A, and then they're like, I'm in the middle of getting like 4 deals, like paperwork ready. I'm trying to get signatures. And they're just outside eating Chick-fil-A. Like, hey, Cam, you want a nugget? I'm like, yes, I do. I want a nugget. And then my manager was like, what's taking so long? I was like, I'm eating, like that was awesome. And then just another customer experience relationship. After that whole night, they're like, hey, Cam, come over. It's one of our holidays. So I ended up going over. They made me like this chicken, had a drink. And then, he calls me all the time just to check in. We're like, pretty close. I'm like his guy. So like he'll send people my way. I've already sold everyone in his family a car, a couple of his friends. That is like solid relationship.
That's awesome to have. I mean, that
2 R8s was crazy.
It was a crazy.
That was a
thing to
headache
see.
though. That's how stressful it is to drive a car that's that expensive and is not yours. Oh,
yeah.
it's scary.
I know when I worked in the cars, I used to take the used like McLarens and the not
Why they have a
McLarens.
McLaren at Nissan?
Yeah.
Sorry, hold on. The reason I said they did have a
Crazy.
McLaren at Nissan. Nobody was allowed to drive it. I'm mixing it up. We used to take like the Maseratis and the G wagons and
Oh,
stuff
yeah.
like that
Different
out for
reasons.
lunch and stuff.
Take it for a little lap.
Yeah, you just go grab lunch real quick, in a car that's not yours by an obvious stance.
It's hard not to be spoiled being around all these expensive vehicles.
Honestly, yeah, it's terrible.
Like it's such a shame whenever you see a very nice car and you're just like,
All right.
eh. Like, who are we to even say that? That's so
Like me
not
from
okay.
2-3 years ago would have been like, Isaiah, what the hell is wrong
Yeah.
with you? Do you see what you're doing for a living? You see what you drive and all this other cool stuff? Like, God, what's wrong with
Just
you?
get like, well, it'd be different. Only one would still be awesome. But just like looking at one, just like, have to look at these all day. Yeah.
So being younger guys in the sales industry, I mean, what do you think some problems you guys run into because of that, or what adversity have you guys faced because of that?
This one is so not being taken seriously was the biggest one for the longest time. I know Cam probably
I
gets
lie
it
about
up.
my age.
I didn't do that.
Sometimes like I have to.
What do you
Bro,
mean?
when it helps a little bit more now that I'm 21, so like I can
Okay,
like
yeah.
we can
You're an
relate
adult.
on levels where I can legally drink alcohol. But before, like, they would say stories or like they would ask for recommendations, so I always hit them with this one. I'd be like, how old do you think I am? They're like 24. I'm like 22, close. Yeah. Or like vice versa, 22. I'm like I'm 23, but everyone says I look young, so I just like spin it off that way. But like I had to, because who wants
damn
to
salesman, you can't trust him.
who would want to spend, that much money with a 20-year-old kid? I wouldn't.
I wouldn't.
Like,
I
I
wouldn't
wouldn't
trust
do
you.
it.
What are
Like,
you doing?
You gotta.
That was a huge one. Being
That is-
younger,
yeah.
God, they don't take you seriously. They're
No.
like, are you like a porter or something? It's like,
Yeah.
all right, great.
You gotta. Yeah. That's. I don't really have to do it no more now, because at least I can refer them to bars that are around here.
Yeah.
But I'm old enough to do it. But before, I had to.
I mean,
Yeah.
easy trick to get around. Just grow a mustache.
The hardest thing in
Tripping
the world.
dirt.
You guys aren't wrong, because I started selling like 2 days after I turned 20, and I was selling roofs, which is pretty important investment on people's homes.
Yeah.
'Cause, I think we could say that.
And you don't own a home.
The amount of like verbal wizardry I was doing to avoid the age question coming up, just because I couldn't ever lie. I'd always tell people straight across, just like, yeah, I'm 20. This is what I do. And then the moment people would figure out how old I am, it's like drilling every question in the world, which worked out well for me in the long run, because I had to become more educated than most people would to be in roofing sales, because I was going to get asked more questions than anybody else. But that is the biggest struggle in the world, is just people taking you serious. The other thing that I find that's difficult when you're younger and you're in sales is like your friend groups and learning, hey man, like I can't go do this because I have to be up at 7 o'clock in the morning to be at the dealership, or like something like that.
Sometimes I would like to think that I have gotten that one down, but then cold beer calls my name.
Yep. I was gonna say
We're getting better though.
Yeah, we've done a lot
We're getting a lot better. That is one thing you have to learn quick. Like you cannot go out and stay up all night and then expect to be able to sell a car. Like,
I mean, every now and again you fall into a deal where you're like that. But
Yeah.
it's
I think
not
the
that
one
often.
thing that's just craziest about it is because we have to use our head
And
so
energy,
much.
yeah.
It's head and energy and like your personality.
Yeah.
And if you have a labor job and you stay up till 3 a.m. and you get up at 6:30 and you go to work all day, like, and all you're doing is kind of moving things around, like, sure,
You can make it through the day. Yeah.
That
Yeah.
sucks.
It's gonna suck.
Don't get me wrong, but you can definitely make it through the day. I'm not gonna make any money at all
No.
if I don't get any sleep, because I have to be able to have a long technical conversation. I have to be able to follow along with whatever story or whatever you tell me, so that I can keep track of all the details, and
Yeah.
pay attention is another thing. God forbid.
that is definitely something you learn
quick.
Yeah.
that is
like if you're not
quick.
a coffee drinker or a Monster or any other energy drink, you better
Caffeine.
start. Yeah, you got to start.
Yeah.
I don't think you can be in sales without some
There's-
kind of ice.
Yeah, you have to.
Some
Yeah.
people's caffeine, some people's nicotine. I'm sure we've all
The
met
good
a
ones
few
are
that
both.
do.
Good ones are both.
Good ones.
Those
are
are dangerous salespeople.
Those
to
are
be
dangerous
around.
salespeople.
Yeah.
They're out here
There's a room with
bouncing
3 of them.
off the wall. If you could change like one thing about the car industry as a whole, what would it be?
Kelly Blue Book.
KBB.
Yeah, KBB.
I
all
gotta
day.
hear an elaboration on that.
They don't
Cameron-
buy cars and they put false numbers on vehicles.
Cameron, why don't you give me this? KBB's giving me that.
Go sell your car to KBB?
Oh, what do you mean by that?
They don't buy cars.
My God. False expectations
Yeah.
all the time.
Their numbers aren't
Every
fair
time.
to anyone else in the world. Not even CarMax keep up with the KBB numbers.
Yeah.
I don't even know.
Where do they get it from? It's
I don't-
fugazi. It doesn't exist. It's not real.
Pixie dust.
Pixie
Yeah,
dust.
that's one thing I would change. KBB.
KBB. Are they basing their numbers off of? What are you
Why
doing?
does it move? It keeps moving, like, it'll get him out, and then it'll get Isaiah out.
Does it go to like whoever's moving the most?
I don't know why it's moving. There is a joystick though on it. More technical difficulties from the
Yeah,
Trident Talk podcast.
Yeah, that's part of
you
it.
see the little there's a
Oh,
joy. No. The
The
joystick.
I
it-
don't want to mess with it.
It's that button right there. Okay, and move side to side.
It just drops.
That's how you move the camera.
Oh shit.
There.
Okay, we
It
good?
was cutting
There
out
we
his
go.
back, and then it was cutting out
I mean,
Caleb's back.
You know, the video portion of these podcasts is not that great. We're working on that one day at a time. You know,
It's a lot better than my
we've got
podcast.
we've got
True.
mics, so we have pretty good audio.
There you go.
That's a bonus.
Whenever we get it to work.
Yeah, whenever we get it to work, you know, some technical difficulties even leading into that. KBB doesn't buy cars, but are they posting like what they should be selling for at a dealer or
So
what?
they post what they sell for and their trade-in value, but their trade-in value you have to scroll a long way to find.
Mm-hmm.
So people see the number, which is retail, which obviously there's a trade and there's a retail number, but you see that, and then your mind's stuck on that. You don't want to take $4,000 or $5,000 less. KBB is just, I don't even know where they get their numbers from. I don't know if it's like a nationwide average or what it is, but it's an unfair assessment of your vehicle because no one's honest whenever they're judging their own vehicle. They don't know what to look for when trading a vehicle, and everyone has protocols like the windshield. People like forget that that's now really expensive. There's a lot of technology to go into the windshield.
Mhm.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of things that are minor to a consumer who's not informed on what it takes to fix these vehicles. But of course, everything's excellent if you own it. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So it's a false expectation for everybody.
I think it'd be so much easier if there was just like a hard reset because people hate the car sales and like the whole industry because of how it used to be. I've heard the horror stories
Yeah,
of like how
man.
people or how the general managers down to the salespeople would treat customers back in the day when it was just like newspaper ads,
Yeah.
and that's carried over into today. You can't do that kind of stuff these days because
There's
your
competition.
Google reviews
Yeah.
will be
Google.
destroyed. They'll go down the street. They can do anything else. So you cannot be that old school car sales tactic. But people still think we do that kind of stuff.
Mm.
So I wish that could just reset. That'd be so nice.
Yeah, I understand that. Working in contracting and roofing, you know, 80% of contractors fail in like 2 years, and because of that, there's a lot of bad things said about roofers. We're not all created the same, just
Yeah.
like all car sales guys aren't created the same. And my last big question for you guys is like, we'll start with Isaiah. You know, what are your goals for the future, and what's your plan with car sales moving forward?
That is a question I get asked all the time by friends and family. My end goal is just to continue going in the industry. So we have steps like pretty clearly laid out for us here. Next step is go to you just sales on your own to a team lead, then you get to finance, and then desk manager, which would be really nice is to get that end goal as in the general manager spot. That is where I would love to be. I think I'd be great there because selling cars is awesome. It's fun and all that. I don't think that's my strongest suit. I think I'm much more of a like leading type person, as that's just what I'm better at, just based off my history. That's the end goal, is to lead the store. That would be great. That's what I want to do.
So what gives you the confidence that you think you'd be a great leader?
Just like I said, past experiences. So I've got 3 other brothers. I'm not the oldest one, but I am really the one with the brains that kind of leads us. Not to say they're dumb or anything. It's just I'm the one that,
Just not as smart as you.
yeah, not everybody can be. It's hard. But just based off of that, and then I take a lot of that from my dad because he was the youngest of his brothers and his sisters, but he was the leader. He was the one that kind of did the things that nobody else wanted to do. You know, he had his hardships in life and all that, just like all of us, but he didn't let that hold him back. He kept going forward. Now he has a beautiful family, has his wife that my mom, they've been together now for 28 years, something like that, married. So if he was able to instill that, or since he was able to instill that kind of leadership into me, I believe that I could do that for a store. Obviously, you know, I need some more experience and all that good stuff, but I think down the line, I have the fundamentals, the foundation to be able to do that successfully.
It's a really good, goal. Do you have any kind of like plans on how you are going to achieve that, or is like there's something you're working on right now that'll help you get to that position?
Yeah. So, like I said, there's the steps for it. My next step is to prove that I can do it on my own with no help, no team lead, nobody to come behind me to close a deal that I can't do it. So that's the next step. After that, I can lead a team of where new guys, I can show them from the very ground up, this is how you treat a customer, this is how you sell a car.
Mm-hmm.
And then going from there, proving that I'm good enough to do that, to lead, you know, we're young guys, but we're not children. You can lead these young guys, mold them into that, then you can go to finance, and that's great. If you can succeed there, then there's no reason why you couldn't succeed behind the desk, which is you're telling the young sales guy, hey, this is what you need to say to get this deal done. And that's something that I know that I can't do that yet, but I know it's something that I can learn to do. And then from there, if you're successful, you end up being the director of the used car, whatever you have. From there, you can go ahead and be a GM if, you know, the higher up see that you have that potential, that you've stuck it through long enough, and you know what you're doing, they trust you. And it's just that, just continuously building trust from the upper management guys who make those decisions.
So you ready for your first piece of advice?
Yeah.
Okay. Forget about the number, the age number. I mean, ultimately, it does not matter. I've been in a leadership management role since I was 21. I've managed guys that were 50 all the way down to 19, you know. So what I will tell you is that is a bigger burden to you than it is to anybody else. If you are the best at what you do and you're fully competent at what you do, there's no reason your age should ever be considered. And one of the things that you can really see as a yard marker for success in that is when you do manage older guys, or if you have older guys in the same organization and they start to come to you for advice, it means they're not seeing your age. They're seeing your skill. And one of the biggest things that led to me kind of overcoming that barrier myself was just realizing that age mattered to me. It didn't seem to matter to anybody else. So if it didn't matter to anybody else, it shouldn't matter to me. And once you take into that age thing off the table and you just lead as you should be a leader, what your ideal of the good leader in that role is, that's when you'll start to be that person. But if you use your age as a limiting factor on why you're going to be that, you'll start to see that it comes to fruition. What we believe is true inherently in our actions. And then
if you want to put that one in the notes.
And then if you want to move up, you know, the squeaky wheel gets grease. Like, talk about it. Make outlandish statements. I mean, be on the borderline of arrogant and confidence. I mean, confidence said the wrong way will come out as arrogance, but sometimes that's good. I'm a little bit arrogant. I'll be the first to tell anybody in the world I live in a delusion where I'm the best at everything that I do. Am I the best podcaster in the world? Probably not, but in my head I sure am. Am I the best roofer in the world? Maybe not. I'm sure there's plenty of guys who know more than me, but I'm better than them in my head. So live in this world of where you're the best. Talk about what your goals are, because if you openly put out on the table like, I'm going to do that and this is how I'm going to go about doing this, other people that are aware of your dreams and ambitions will start to help you forward. It may not be a lot of people, but for example, if somebody comes to me and they tell me their goal and I'm in a position to be able to help them go towards that goal, I do it because it makes me feel good to help people. It makes most people feel good to help people. So don't be bashful about what some of your ambitions are, because if nobody knows what you're trying to do, the opportunities are less and less. Mm-hmm. That brings us over to you. What are some of your goals for the future?
Over the next 2 years, 3 years, probably stick it out still in the car business. I mean, the money's good. Keep doing what I'm doing as far as saving it, being your cheerleader. So ideally in about 2 years, the company that you have started should be making money where I can then take a leave from the car sales industry and jump into our real estate ventures. But we're both in the point where we have our plan and we know what we want to do. We just, the point of action isn't here yet. I mean, I have to have finances to pay for my responsibilities and then be able to cover while we're in school. But ideally I want to take the next 2 years. Obviously if you can sell cars, I mean, hand in hand with what you do, I feel like you can learn so much. I mean, every day I go to work, I learn. So the next 2 years, just continue like fine edging my craft. So that way the point in time that we start our other, life adventures, I'll be a lot sharper than I am today and have more experience than I do have today. But of course I'm going to keep, until that gets here, continuing to learn and sharpen the blade, I guess.
Yeah, not to pat on your back too much, but I'm incredibly proud of all the things that you've done. I mean, you came in, you started selling when you were like 19. I know you started working with me, turned 20, decided to go into the cars. I mean, you've been super successful in the year that you've been in cars. I mean, it's super awesome to see. Unfortunately, Isaiah, I didn't grow up with you. I don't know as much as I know about him, obviously, but you guys, for being young, seem to be making a good way for yourself in the car industry, and that's awesome to see. Thank you for tuning into episode 7 of Trident Talk and Building Brilliance. Hopefully you guys learned something about the car industry today. Like and subscribe. Share to a friend if you gained anything, and we'll see you next week.